here with the fourth episode again. PvZ series. I got with me our very own Nyoken. We were supposed to have Beast Jaehoon join to guest here, but unfortunately he got busy with work and he wasn't able to join. So today, again, we're going over Protoss versus Zerg. We didn't get any viewer submitted replays, but that's okay. And just kind of going over our agenda really quick. What we're going to do is we're going to go over the basics of the 1-1 builds. Okay, so for Protoss, basically one of the most common builds these days is go for a fast expand, going for a +1 Corsairs, +1 Zealot, attacking at 730, following up and going for a 2-0 timing. Okay, so that's probably, if you guys are new to Protoss, you guys got to know that build. You guys got to know those two timing attacks, nail them really well, and then your PvZ will just be way better. So after that, we're also going to go over a pro replay. If you guys tuned in last week, it was the replay from Larva versus Jaehoon on Blue Storm. So I'm going to look at that from the Protoss perspective and kind of just analyze and kind of talk through all the nuances between PvZ, especially because last week we went over ZVP. Afterwards, we're also going to just talk through, just various kind of Starcraft topics. Maybe we'll talk about the evolution of PvZ Meta. We're going to talk if ZVP is truly IMBA or not. And then we're also going to talk about some other current events like BSL 6 and go through a time of Q&A. So, all right, without further ado, we are going to start with the first replay. And this is actually a replay from Dragon. And honestly, Dragon is one of the most textbook Protosses ever. So, I don't know. Nyoken, you got some thoughts on Dragon's play in general?
Well, I've played Terran, so I can only speak from experience versus his Protoss and the Terran perspective, and it's really good. It's not like he does anything flashy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just solid, right? He hits his macro.
Yeah.
He hits his, he takes bases, he hits his pylons. There's never really a stage in the game where I feel like, okay, I can exploit this first dragon.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everything is just by the book.
Yeah, and I think even for PvZ too, and I'm not as well versed in PvT, but I feel like for PvZ it's like so mapped out, especially because you're going for a forge fast expand, unless your opponent is going like mass Hydras or something, which does happen a lot. Assuming the game goes kind of normally, which a lot of PvZs actually do, there's so many things that you can do that's just mapped out to that 730 mark without getting bothered. So I think if you just really understand your build and really understand the mechanics, you can really get good at PvZ, to be honest. I think it's always going to be a pain no matter what, because it's Zerg and they got Zerglings and crap like that. But, for the most part, I think if you stick to the build, you can definitely get very good very fast.
Yeah, I agree. You really do have to hit build orders nowadays. In the past, you could freestyle a bunch, but now, since everybody has access to the FP VODs, you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to build an extra zealot here or whatever, and it really messes your build up by even just 20 or 30 seconds. You flat out cannot do that anymore unless you have it already planned to follow up in another way.
Right, yeah.
So, Protoss vs. Zerg, in my opinion, pretty difficult for Protoss, because unlike in the other matchups, Protoss really is in the dark. We're seeing this probe come out from Dragon. As soon as this probe is off the map, he's got a forge coming up here. So once this is dead, it's kind of like, okay, I've got to really guess what Zerg is doing.
Yeah.
And if you guess wrong, you potentially get busted. You really don't have vision again until the Sair comes out. And, most of the time it's still okay to not see what's coming until the Sair mark comes.
Right.
But if you get 3-hatch Hydra and you have one cannon, well, there's GG.
Right. Yeah, so I think here, let me just pause really quick. So we're going to focus so much on the scouting today. Like I said, or like you said, the scouting information, I think just with the entire series, when we've seen kind of viewer submitted replays, I feel like a lot of the problems that I see are because people are not scouting. And I think with this probe, you got to keep it alive. So you see here, Yaw just opened for an overpull. And almost always for an overpull, you really have to open with a forge. And then you got to get the cannon. If you want to be a little bit daring, you can get the Nexus before the cannon. But usually, if you want to be safe, if you're at a lower level, I would actually just recommend getting the cannon before the Nexus, just because you don't want to die to the Lings. But at the same time, one thing to note here really quick is that in Dragon's Vision right now, you see there's 3 larvae, right? 2 of those were turned into drones, right? Which means only one of them is going to be a Zergling to chase a probe down. And every Protoss should know 6 Zerglings will just A-move a cannon and kill it. Okay, so if you just A-move a cannon, you'll die. So against 6 Zerglings, you need at least 2 cannons, or you bring probes to like block, so that, you know, the Zlings can't just like run past you or something. So it's always important to scout, is the Zerg making 6 Lings or 2 Lings or 4 Lings or what?
Yeah, so we see 2. So now the probe is going to survive longer.
Yep.
But I want to point out that if you're lower level, you know, you're microing this probe since like since maybe like 115 mark.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of micro to be doing.
Yeah.
While that's happening, you've got to build up your base. Like,
right.
You see, he's building pylon, he's building Nexus, he's building cannon, he's getting his gateway on time. If you mess up, oh my gosh, he almost got his probe picked off.
Yeah.
So this is kind of this. Now imagine if this was 4 Lings. This would 100% be dead.
Right.
Now, okay, now if
Yep,
we pause right here, what's Dragon's Vision?
Yep, it's got nothing.
Right, it's 315, and he doesn't see a third hatch. He sees gas. This is what I feel like a lot of Protoss players struggle with, is because now, what do? There's no catch-all build really. Like for example, let's say I'm Terran and I have the scenario where I can't scout. Well, the catch-all for Terran is I build tanks and I sit on my ledge.
Yeah.
But Protoss, you can't just do that, because let's say you build 3 cannons as the. I'm just throwing this out. Let's say 3 cannons makes you safe, right?
Right.
Well, then Zerg potentially builds 5 hatch off of those 2 Lings. That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
You have no clue.
Right.
And then if you don't build the cannons, say 3 hatch, Hydra bust you.
Yep.
So for me, since I off-race Protoss a little bit, this is really my struggle, because you have no vision.
Absolutely.
And there's so many viable builds for Zerg.
Right. So you see, look at what Dragon's doing right now. He loses his probe, he sends another one immediately out, right? And that's what every good player is going to do. Why? Because vision is king in this game. Okay, so let me just pause here. Let me just kind of like walk into the mindset of a Protoss. So what are we scouting for here, right? Like, we're trying to see, is my opponent massing Lings? Does he have a lair tech? Is he making Hydra den? A lot of times, if you get your pro picked off too early, then the Zerg can just kind of camp the ramp, and you'll never really see if they actually have a Hydra den or a lair in the main base. But let's see if Dragon can get in the main base and see that tech. But if not, you can usually kind of just keep camping and scouting like the natural or third to see if there's like Lings or Hydras being made. But 100%, you need to know what's going on. And you see Dragon here is just continuing with this tech, going straight for a Cybernetics core. I feel like if you're going for this 1-1 build, you're just going straight into Stargate until Zerg makes you do anything otherwise. So let's continue here.
Yeah, I think Stargate, I mean, we see a lot of Citadel openings these days, but I think Stargate is just the way to play, because even, let's say they go Hydras, right? And obviously Citadel's the best counter to Hydras.
Yeah.
But even if you go Stargate, I mean, at least you're getting feedback on what's going on. At least you're not building Mass Zealot into potentially mutas, right?
Right.
So I would prefer Stargate. Like, this probe got in again, which is pretty surprising to me, because we had 2 Lings. We could have just held position on the ramp here.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was talking about this earlier. If you don't hit your build, let's say Dragon didn't put his gateway on time.
Yeah.
And that adds 15 more seconds. Well, now we see the Stargate. Potentially when the Zerg gets to Yaj's base, he'll have Scourge out, and then the Zerg doesn't even get any information. So it's really, you really do have to hit your build with Protoss. It's so unforgiving. I feel like this is probably the most unforgiving matchup.
Yeah.
Just because of the complete lack of information.
Exactly, yeah. So we see here, Dragon's got a good scout. He knows exactly what's coming on. I mean, at this point, you usually assume like 70% of the time, Zerg with the 3rd close base in this position going lair is going to go for the 5-hatch Hydra build. So you see Dragon, he got his 2nd gas before the Stargate came down. I didn't see exactly what time, but maybe around 23, 24 supply. He's getting +1 air weapons with his Corsairs coming out. And so now this probe can actually come back home if he wants to, because then the Corsair is going to get the scout. And so what we're going to see, so let me just pause really quick. What Dragon is building up to right now is making sure he doesn't die, right? So with the scouting information, he didn't make any more cannons, right? He just made one cannon, blocking his base. You know, you see he's very disciplined, making sure there's no Lings coming in, making sure there's no Hydras coming in, and he's gonna want to build up to maybe six or seven Zealots and 5 Corsairs at 730, okay? So let's see how cleanly Dragon gets this build. And again, this isn't just coincidence. Dragon's practiced this, he's studied this, he's going to try to move out at 730 with Speed Zealots and Overlords, okay? So everything he's going to do is going to be centric around that single thing.
Yeah, and this Sair also needs to be at the base before, I think, what is it, like 6:15 or so for Zerg? Because at that point, the Scourge are out, and then you can scout, but you're risking losing the Sair. So we see the 540 Sair.
Yeah.
That's probably going to get the base at around, 555, whatever. So he's got 10 to 15 seconds to actually go scouting. He doesn't need more than that. He just needs to identify, like, okay, what's the Spire timing? Do I see an Evolution Chamber? Do I see Hydra? If you see Evolution Chamber with a second gas, you're pretty sure that this is going to be 5-hatch Hydra. Whereas we see Yaj here, sure, he's got 5-hatch. But there's not really the gas to support, I don't think, a mass Hydra bust. So for me, this is going to be a macro build from Yaj. Now, I don't know about Dreamliner because I don't play Dreamliner. But let's say I saw this on Fighting Spirit. I feel like this would be a good spot where potentially Dragon takes a fast third base.
Yeah, so I think here, and just I kind of want to point out one small tidbit here is that, like, with the Corsair, the first thing almost any good Protoss does with the Corsair is the scout. Like, it might be tempting to kill the first Overlord that you see, but, and sometimes that can pay off if you have really good scouting information, but you really want to go to their main base and check to see what's going on first and then kill an Overlord if you can. So one tidbit for all the Protoss out there, if the Spire is not done yet, and you start hitting an Overlord, you can kill that Overlord and run away in time. Okay, but if the Spire is done, and then as they start to build a Scourge, then you probably should run away. Like, you shouldn't try to kill an Overlord if the Spire's already done. So here, we see the Spire's at like 80-85% done. Dragon can actually just kill an Overlord right now and run away and be safe. Just how the timing works out. But let's see what he actually does. I mean, let's see if he actually... Okay, he's going to poke it down. So let's watch the timing here. I mean, like, let's see... This is surprising to me that he's going to kill it because all he did was scout the main. Now, we see that Yaj just started taking his gas, right? But let's say Dragon kills this Overlord and then he goes to the natural and this extractor's done. Well, now all of a sudden he might think that Yaj is going for a timing, but we know he doesn't have the gas for that. So now he is getting 2 Overlords. Oh my gosh, that's huge.
But if he only got 1, I'm not sure if I'm liking that really.
Yeah, so he kind of mapped this out because, again, Dragon's a very good Protoss where, like, he saw that the Spire was at 80-85%. He knew he could have gotten 2 Overlords. Now, he is at risk of losing a Corsair here, but at the same time, he did map that out in terms of, like, the timing because usually if he didn't have the time, he would have just ran away. But going back to Dragon's base, so we see a cannon coming down at his base, and that's usually to kind of deflect the Scourge. So you see this really weird, a lot of Protoss do this these days, where they make their cannon like kind of far out instead of by the mineral line where you might expect it. That's because he wants the Scourge to kind of ram into that cannon and die before it has a chance to run away. And so he's going to try to save his Corsairs again. He wants to get to that 5 to 6 count. Usually with this build, you also want to get a... Templar Archives at about 6:30, and so I imagine the Templar Archives is going to come down like right away. But let's see the timing on that. Let's play it, and he's going to try to micro his Corsairs because losing 1 Corsair is so huge at this point. You really don't want to lose a single Corsair at all. So it looks like he's going to get away successfully.
Yeah, I mean, Sairs are only 100 gas, but that's almost equal to building a Templar. And when these Hydras come marching in, if you don't have 1 storm, potentially you lose the game because the Sair isn't really going to help you unless you're countering by like killing Overlords and then you survive, and then because you killed Overlords you stall the follow-up attack. That would really be the only scenario where the Sairs actually save you in that scenario. But surprisingly, Yaj actually is going for the timing. Now, because I don't play Zerg, I don't know exactly the gas time, but it seems like it's a little slower than normal.
I think the gas...
I do want to point out, there is the evolution chamber that I talked about. Now remember, I pointed out that because he killed these Overlords, he didn't get a scout. So again, he missed the extractor timing.
Right.
He's missed this evolution chamber timing.
Right.
He may flat out not care that he doesn't know that it's coming.
Right.
But I do want to point out that he did miss it.
Right. Yeah, so I think sometimes, like, every now and then, like, you kind of have to play with sense, and I think maybe Dragon, like, he's kind of taking his chances in terms of, like, hey, I'm pretty sure this is 5-batch Hydra. I don't need to scout everything. I mean, maybe he should have scouted that second gas to make sure it's not like a mass muta build, but I think Dragon at this point, if we just took off vision, I think, like, he might not know exactly what's happening, but I think he's basically saying 80% of the time here, my opponent's going 5-batch Hydra, right? And if he doesn't, then, he's not going to die to, like, an all-in, right? Because the only thing that can kill Dragon right now is a Hydra bust. So we talked about earlier, everything Dragon was doing was to build up to 6 or 7 Zealots, which he has at the front, and 5 or 6 Corsairs, right? Which he has right now. So once this is all done, he's going to move out. And right after this, he's going to build some more cannons to not die to a Hydra counter. And also go Templars immediately so that, he has Storms to defend the Hydra counter. So let's see. He's probably going to move out soon. He's got 7 Zealots, going to move out with the Corsairs. He's going to try to do damage at the Zerg's base. Usually, sometimes you can attack together, or other times you can attack separately to kind of like make a diversion with like your Corsairs, but let's watch his Zealots. So it's Corsairs are going to the main base. Maybe the Hydras might come back to kill that, while the Zealots go to the third base. So let's see the damage that he can be able to do.
And now he knows that the Hydras are out of position, so he's going to get tons of Overlords here. Now every Overlord he kills here is massive. Like, he doesn't really have to worry about tons of reinforcing Hydras coming out.
Right.
Now he's busting the third base because those Mat Hydras had to come back.
Yeah.
So this is a nice attack from him.
Yeah, and he's going to kill these Overlords. So sometimes, even just killing Overlords does damage and denying mining time. So a lot of times, he killed like 4 or 5 Overlords there, right?
Yeah,
so
he killed like 6 total.
Right, so I feel like a lot of times for a Protoss, what I love about this attack is that, you remember, let's scroll back a little bit. I wonder, because I didn't have vision for Yaj as he was attacking, but I think, what Dragon does is he creates the diversion and kind of makes the Zerg nervous with the Corsairs flying into the main base instead of attacking with the Zealots, if that makes sense, right? So you can kind of do this to make like, oh shoot, my my Hydras need to be defending, the main base, but the Zealots seems to be going to the third base. So I wonder if like he forces Yaj to like kind of react to the Corsairs, which makes his defense at the...
he reacted to the Zealots because they're going to the left side, which opened up the opportunity to kill the Nat. But now he's in between, and he turns around. But by the time he turns around, the Sairs are going to leave now. Yeah. And now his Hydras are out of position at the left side. And on top of it, I want to point out the greed here from Yaj.
Yeah.
Where are the Sunkens? There are none.
Yeah.
Now that could be because... Dragon got a couple Overlord kills, and now because in the beginning, those first 2 he got, well, now Yaj might feel like, okay, well, I missed some drone cycles here. I can't even afford Sunkens.
Right. Yeah. So in this situation, like if you get damage done, it might be worth it to get a Sunken. But if you're just going 5-batch Hydra and you didn't take that much damage, then and as long as you're in position and you know exactly where the Zealots are going, typically you can guard this without Sunkens with just mass Hydras. But if you've taken damage, I mean, look how Dragon just kind of beautifully forces those Hydras, like you said, in between, picks off an Overlord. That opens up these Zealots to kind of attack the third base, right? Because if those Hydras were at the third base right now, these Zealots wouldn't be doing damage, right?
Yeah, and on top of it, Dragon has +1 now, so instead of Hydras really getting 6-shotted, they're getting 5-shotted here.
Yeah.
So they're dying even faster. We have +1 on air too.
Right.
So these Overlords are just melting.
Right.
And for Zerg at this point in the game, if you take damage like this, it's almost game ending because it starts snowballing really hard where you can't manage your drone production and Hydra production.
Right.
Which just gives up map control to Protoss.
Right. No, absolutely. So a lot of times as a Protoss, here Dragon was able to get max value out of those Zealots. I mean, he's way ahead here, right? Because the 1-1 build that we're trying to like kind of teach here is twofold. You do damage by killing either Overlords, Hydras, or both, or you can kill drones. Like he killed a whole bunch of drones here, but a lot of times you don't have to force the issue. So what I see is that a lot of times Protoss like send Zealots in, like just to send it in, even if they have like Sunkens or like mass Hydras. Like if you can't bust them, you just gotta run away. You know what I mean? Like because if you lose your Zealot count, you have to rebuild all that. For every Zealot that you lose, that's gonna make your mid game push a lot weaker. So let's keep this on the pause position and go back to Dragon's base, right? I mean, you see here, he did all that damage. He's got no units at his base, but now he's got, 6 gateways on the way, and this is the correct build order. You put up 4 gateways, you make some cannons with High Templar and Storm ready, so that if Zerg, Zerg still has Hydras, right? So you want to make sure you don't die to the Hydra counterattack. Okay, so let's continue to.
I also want to point out that if you throw your zealots away, right? We were talking about this. There's no map control, or there's no vision for Protoss. So then Protoss has to be like, okay, am I getting busted here?
Yeah.
Or am I not? Because if you're getting busted, you have to build cannons.
Right.
And then if you're not, Zerg takes another base. But because you built cannons, that delays your third base. So it kind of, starts snowballing into Zerg's favor, and it almost becomes unrecoverable because now you're facing 4 base Zerg and you're still on 2 base.
Yeah.
And they just, stand in storm and just soak them all up because they just have infinite Hydras.
Yeah.
So you cannot just throw your zealots like, oh, I hit my timing, I got to go and waste them.
You're right.
No, you can't do that.
Absolutely. So like here, you see Yash trying to go in for the counterattack, but I mean Dragon, I don't know if you need to get 5 cannons. Like I do know Dragon's a bit more of a conservative player, but I also know that Yash is also a very aggressive player. So I think in those circumstances against an aggressive player, maybe the Zerg just wants to go all in, so getting the five cannons is definitely worth it. But sometimes you can get away with like 3 or 4 depending on how many storms and zealots you have. So right here, the only thing Dragon cares about is scouting to see what Yaj is doing, and he's gonna go in to build for a 2-0 timing. Okay, so let me pause really quick. Basically, after the follow up to that 7:30 attack, and you don't have to do this 1-1 build, but you can go for a fast Dark Templar, you can do other types of builds, but basically almost every Protoss in the world should be building up to this timing attack at around 12 minutes, right? It could be a little bit earlier if you saved up your zealots, it could be a little bit later depending on what happened, but you usually want to build up your zealot High Templar count, take your third base around 10 minutes. I think it's a little bit late here because Dragon lost a lot of his zealots but did a lot of damage for it. But you see he's getting his robotics facility. He's got 6 gateways. I imagine he's going to start taking his third base soon and probably pump up to 8 gateways. And you usually want to hit around 150 supply at around 12 minutes. I mean, I've seen BSU max out at 12 minutes, but I think a good benchmark for like even a low level player is like 150.
Okay, but can we pause here?
Yeah.
So, again, I off-race Protoss a bit. Now, this point in the game, I feel like, okay, I've hit my 7:30 timing. Everything's standard so far. I got my Templar. But if you watch some pro games, depending on how the game goes, they have a third base at this point.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what determines the reason that Protoss is taking a third base? Because, in my experience, I just do the same thing. I go for that 7 or 8 gate build where I build up to like 15, 16 Dragoons, and then I go for that 150 timing, and then I take my third base because it always feels unsafe to take it versus Hydras, just because of how many they have. But I know for a fact that depending on the game, you can take the third base. Now, I do want to point out it is Dreamliner, so it's not like both players are comfortable on here. But let's say a more comfortable map. What would trigger it for you to say, okay, I can take a third base much faster this game because of X?
Right. I think on a more comfortable, I think because it's Streamliner, I mean, if we just kind of reveal the map here, the third base is pretty far, right? Especially the one with the gas base. That's why a lot of maps in PvZ, if the third base has the gas, then it's a huge plus. But you see there's so much space, like it's kind of far away. I would say it's all about feel. I mean, again, I don't know. I'm not like a professional PvZ or anything like that, but a lot of PvZ has so much to do with improvising, right? Like, if your opponent goes mass Hydra, like nonstop drone, he doesn't take a 4th base, then you might be in some trouble. So it is a bit of a risk, and I think a lot of times it depends on how much damage you get done, right? Like, if the third base is close enough, and you have zealots, and you got 4, High Templars, you got Corsairs constantly scouring the map, like, then I would actually feel pretty safe. But because Dragon lost most of his zealots, and he knows Hyaj is an aggressive player, this is a further third base, it might be a little bit more of a risky move to take that third base, just because I think if Dragon just stays the course, plays conservative, he's probably going to get away with it. But I think a lot of times it really comes down to the Protoss ability to multitask, because if the Zerg moves out with the Hydras, you can counterattack your Corsairs to kill their overlords, right? Because they need to have at least like 4 or 5 Hydra at home to defend their overlord. So it's like the Zerg has to make a decision. Okay, do I want to attack? Do I want to make drones? Because right now Zerg should be droning, and you see here a lot of times Yaj actually remade a whole crap load of drones. If you see his saturation is actually pretty strong. He just doesn't have a 4th base.
Yeah, I agree with that. If I was to just say in general you should do Y or X or Y, I would say in general, regardless of how the game goes, just build up that 50 Dragoon timing. Because it's almost always going to be safe. Whereas with taking the 3rd base, even if you think you did a lot of damage, it's still going to be kind of risky.
Right.
But once you reach, like Dragon's level, he would be able to tell you like, okay, I'm safe to take it now. But if you're lower level, I would just stick to 150 Dragoon timing, because your army is insane at that point in the game. Like, I've talked about this, the switch in power at different points in the game. That's a big switch in power for Protoss, where they have the map and Zerg's got to be afraid. Whereas in the early game, Protoss is the one that's afraid about getting attacked.
Right. So, and usually if you intend on going the 2 base all in, or not all in, but 2 base mass, you want to pump up to 8 gates and then take your 3rd base. And that's kind of like my, like my last resort kind of thing, right? Like if I'm losing, if I can't take a 3rd, I just put up 8 gates, I go for that 150, 160 supply and move out. But you see Dragon here, if you can, he's like going in for a DT drop, which is really nice. Once you kind of build up your Zealot count to Dragon's amount, I mean, he's got like 18. He's probably feeling safe because of the damage he's done. And also the Corsair scouted that there's a lot of drones, right? Like if he saw a whole bunch of Hydras, I'm sure he'd stay in his base. But because he scouted, he knows he can get away with the 3rd base right here. And he's killing a whole bunch of drones.
This DT drop is really nice. Like harassment versus Zerg is almost mandatory. If they just start, it's almost impossible to keep up with their macro and they take bases. And this is while Yaj took a lot of damage in the beginning. If we look at supply, 140 to 105 or so. Yeah. I feel like Yaj does a good job to come back.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's done a good job in like just remaking all of his units. And wow, this DT gets away. So beautiful play there by Dragon. So a lot of times you're not gonna make the shuttle that fast, and this is kind of like a little higher level move, and also just because Dreamliner in particular, it has such a close drop distance. But here, I think a lot of mistakes that a lot of lower level Protoss make is that they overmake Zealots, right? Like I think even just having 12 to 16 Zealots is like the sweet spot, and then from that point, your push power is dependent on your Dragoon count. So you see here, Dragon is only making Dragoons, right? Only making Dragoons. And so we're a little bit past 12 minutes, but that's also because, he went for that quick drop. Like, he lost a lot of Zealots in that early timing. So if Dragon didn't lose those units early on, then he'd probably be already pushing out right now. But again, we're going to focus. You see how his +2 weapons are already done. He's building up Dragoons and only Dragoons. Okay, no more Zealots at this point. Once you have 12 to 18 Zealots, stop making Zealots, only make Dragoons. And a lot of times I see good Protoss actually massing more Dragoons than Zealots. And so we see Yaj just getting his macro up pretty nicely. He's got Lurkers. He's getting ready to defend this timing. So this is the point in time when Protoss gets super strong. And I imagine he's probably going to move out soon here.
Yeah, the reason you need those Dragoons is not just because of the Hydras. Zealots running into 30 Hydras, the Zealots are going to get mowed down. But at the same time, there's also Lurkers.
Right.
And you flat out just cannot have Mass Zealot versus Lurkers. Like, you can kind of make Mass Zealot work versus Hydras, but even versus...
Uh-oh, did you cut out? Hold on. I think we lost Nyoken. Can you hear me? Hello?
Oh?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I guess I did drop. I don't know.
I
was just saying you have to have goons versus Lurkers. Like, you flat out cannot have tons of Zealots. Like, they'll just get insta-killed.
Right. So you see here, he's making a whole bunch of goons, and this battle that we're about to see, this is the most important skill that every Protoss and PvZ, you must learn this, okay? And you know, I play Protoss at a decent level, and this is so hard to do. And you see how he's attacking. Right as he's attacking, he's also taking his 4th base at the 12 o'clock. And usually, kind of like the rule for Protoss is that, and I think rule for most, you know, races is that while you're attacking, that's a good time to expand, right? Because they're focusing so much on not dying that you can usually get away with, you know, an expansion here. But at this point, right here, I mean, we're about to see how to attack into a lurker field 101. Because I know millions of Protoss out there. I don't even know if there's a million people playing Starcraft, but whatever. Every Protoss out there just A moves into a lurker field. Your Zealots get sliced up and you just die. So let's just see this battle right here. Let's see how Dragon kind of meticulously organizes his army here. Okay, well, I guess he's getting sliced up. But he realizes, okay, I've got to move back. And he's going to put his Dragoons up front, right? I mean, usually when I play Dragon, he doesn't waste those Zealots. But you have to keep at least 12 of those Zealots alive. Because when the Zerglings start flooding in to kill your Dragoons, that's when things get dangerous. So he's going to move his Dragoons up forward. He's got his High Templars right there. And he's ready to bust down the Lurkers because Dragoons absolutely destroy Lurkers. And it's just the Lings and Hydras that come in after that, you know, start getting dangerous.
And you also have to be careful with your Observer.
Right.
Look at the Observers. They're not even moving. They could potentially get picked off here.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's just so much damage from Dragon that he's just going to wipe the floor with Yaj.
Yeah.
But in a closer fight, if those Observers go down, that's your whole window out, down the drain, really.
Right, right. You see here, I mean, like, the Storm's just completely wiping the Hydras. You know, you see how patient, look how patient Dragon is, right? This entire fight, he did not send his Zealots in there. You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of other Protoss, they get a little too hasty, they move their Zealots in really fast, and throughout this time, Dragon was also macroing behind this. A lot of times I see Protoss macroing Zealots, because Zealots have the fastest reinforcement, like, run rate, like, they come back behind, but it looks like Dragon has a whole bunch of Dragoons coming back. At this time, Yaj is probably making Zerglings, so the Zerglings try to get good DPS on the Dragoons, but that's what these Zealots behind do, okay? So he's saving the Zealots for the Zergling reinforcements. So let's continue with this. And you see how the High Templar Dragoon just completely ripped through the entire field. And now, when the count gets lower, that's when he sends the Zealots in. This is when Protoss just A moves and just kind of goes into his, just go time right now. So he's just moving in. He's got
Now, the Sares here that come out. I was just about to say that the Sares. Imagine if the Sares were killing these Overlords while that fight was happening. Look how many are over on the left side.
Oh my gosh.
Dragon lost 4 Sares, but if we had 6 here, I mean, we've already killed 3, and they just got here. These would all be dead.
Yeah.
And look, because Yaj's supply block, the game would just end.
Right. And so this is a beautiful attack. I mean, this is so textbook. I mean, this is going to be the GG for the game, but he takes his 4th base behind this. I mean, this is just textbook Protoss, right? Like 7:30 timing, 2:0 timing, and boom, just beautiful micro, beautiful engagement there.
Yeah, but you have to be careful now. The game's 20 years old, so it's not like the olden days, but Dragon, he's reinforcing, okay? That's another key thing. He's not just macroing and he has like 20 sitting at his base, right?
Yeah.
Like he keeps sending.
Right.
And you have to keep sending because look how much production Zerg has.
Yeah.
Even I think he's already reinforced like 5 Dragoons or so. So let's subtract 5. What does he have left? He has 3 Templars and like 6 Dragoons. I mean, that's a decent amount of damage. But look at the Templars. There's 1 Storm.
Yeah.
1 macro cycle would wipe this.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
let's say Yaj gets a lurker field set up again, and now, you know, we're not at 150 supply anymore.
Right.
Dragon's got to build up that army, so it's very important to reinforce your army. You can't it's not enough to just macro it. You've got to keep sending it.
Absolutely, yeah, because this push is the thing that once you bust the Zerg, you win. But if you let the Zerg get set up again, you're in a very bad position, especially if you don't have a 4th base up, right? Because if you, a lot of Protoss, like, you've mentioned that mistake of not macroing and reinforcing. You get your push thrown back. Another, critical error that Protoss make is that they don't take their 4th base, right? And they lose their push. Now all of a sudden the Protoss is in a weird spot because they no longer have an army, right? And it's not even about having an army, it's about maintaining the unit composition, right? Especially against this composition, you need, 12 to 18 Zealots, Master Dragoons, 4 to 6 High Templar, and it takes a long time to build all of that up.
Yeah, and then on top of it, you have to rebuild the Templars, which means you have to rebuild energy. It's
Yeah.
not like you just build Templar and just station them at your 3rd and 4th base
Yeah.
and you're good to go. They
Right.
have to rebuild the energy, so you have to still have somewhat of a standing army, because if that fight went, a little worse for Dragon,
Yeah.
Yaj would just macro up. He could potentially counterattack top left. I look at top left, there's 4 cannons. Even if we put 1 or 2 Templars, that's only 2 storms.
Yep.
And Zerg's on how many hatch? Like 8 or so. And
Yeah.
we have Hive Tech.
Yeah.
So he's going to quickly build up his army if you don't have one.
Right. Absolutely. So, yeah, these are all the kind of critical things that's really important in PvZ. And I understand for like some of the lower level players, like PvZ is a really nightmarish, matchup to play. But as long as you keep this like structure in your head about the 7:30 timing, 12-minute timing, like no matter what the like opening is for the Zerg, you always want to like come back to that, right? Like let's say you have a really weird opening, you had a really weird early game. When in doubt, just be on 2 bases, make 8 gateways, mass up Dragoons, Zealots, High Templars, and Observers, and just move out. You know what I mean? Like when in doubt, just put up 8 gates, move out for this giant attack that we just saw here. So you want to kind of keep the structure similar. Like you want to keep the theory similar, where like you move out, you expand, you know what I mean? You move out, you expand, you build up to the same composition, and you kind of just hit these timings. So that was a really good game by Dragon. We're going to go over another replay, but this time it's going to be a professional between Jaehoon and Larva. We went over this replay last week from the Zerg's perspective, but we're going to go over it this time from the Protoss perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and make here. All right, let's get this one started. And also, by the way, Taylor, thank you for the 70 viewer host. Really appreciate that. All right. Okay. So we've got the white Zerg at the bottom left here is going to be Larva, obviously top tier player. The top right, and again, I'm going to take off Vision for Larva here, and we're going to talk just through the Protoss. Jaehoon is the brown Protoss, and if you guys don't know who Jaehoon is, he is a longtime pro. I think his AKA right now is Bermuda. I think Larva also faced off against Bermuda in the KSL, and I think he took Larva to 5 games, if I recall correctly, right? Did you watch that?
No.
Oh, you didn't watch KSL?
I really don't have time to watch KSL, and especially if it's not the race I play.
Oh, jeez. All right. Okay. Well, yeah, they played, and actually, Jaehoon actually surprised me because I thought Jaehoon would get like completely rolled by somebody like Larva, but he had some really solid games, and I think he took him to 5 games there. So.
Yeah, I'll be honest, without seeing this game or seeing your review from last week, as soon as I saw the players, I was like, okay, well, this is going to be a massacre. And then I see a Blue Storm, and I'm like, why did we even load this replay? I can't imagine this being anything but a stomp from Larva.
Yeah.
But it must be pretty good.
It's okay. I mean, I think it's, I'm just showing it because it's the same replay I showed last week, and I just want to show it from the Protoss perspective. And by the way, guys, if you guys have any questions, we'll do a Q&A at the end. You can either go ahead and submit them on my Discord if you want, and I can just kind of record it there, or you can wait till the end in about, 45 minutes, and we'll probably just take some Q&A questions there. So, all right, again, so we see Jaehoon scouts the overpull, and you would say probably overpull is like the most standard CVP build in your experience? Like casting and stuff?
Yeah, overpool just seems to be the standard. It's safe for everything, depending on map.
Yeah.
You can still get lings there before a cannon gets up if they go Nexus first. And I want to point out that even though Jaehoon scouts overpool here, there's still a forge here, but this is map dependent.
Yeah.
Whereas if this was fighting spirit, you could get away with the Nexus before the forge, I'm pretty sure. But here, there's no way. The rush distance is just so short. Right.
Yeah, it also depends on, like, the walls. Like, if the wall... Like, there are certain maps where Protoss can do, like, a one-gap wall. But Blue Storm is kind of tricky, actually. So you see here, his cannon's kind of exposed. I think Jaehoon's going to do a bit of a funny, funny thing here. But did he build the Nexus before the cannon? I think he
He
did.
built it before the cannon. So
Okay.
to me, that's
So that's ballsy.
pretty greedy. But yeah, because if there's 6 lings here, I'm
Yeah.
100% sure they would be there before the cannon. But again,
Right.
we pointed out last game. Now I didn't see it in this game if he saw drones before the lings.
Yeah.
But like you pointed out last game, potentially he saw drones before the lings, and that
Right.
might have triggered like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna build a nexus this time.
Yeah.
As opposed to the cannon.
Yeah, I think what happened was he probably spent the larva, like instead of building up to 3 larva, he saw, some drones being made even before the pull finished, right? So sometimes if you see that, as long as it's not 6lings, like you should be pretty safe from doing that. But it is a gamble though, because like sometimes some Zergs just send their Zerglings straight to like the opponent's base without chasing the probe, and like sometimes Protoss assumes, oh, I'm just, these 2 lings are going to chase my probe, but then they end up going straight to the base, and then all of a sudden you're in a lot of trouble. So, all right, so Jaehoon getting a good scout, right? He sees the lair, no Hydra dead. He's just continuing to scout to see if there's no mass lings and all that stuff. So things are looking pretty standard.
Yeah, everything's standard so far. He doesn't know where the 3rd hatch is.
Yeah.
Now, because it's not a standard map like CB or Fighting Spirit, where you potentially take another main or you take a mid base,
right.
Regardless of where Larva takes his 3rd base, I don't think it's really going to affect his game plan. If he takes it at the mineral only, he's still probably going to hide, or he's still going to make Hydras. Whereas on Circuit Breaker or Fighting Spirit, if he took another main, maybe he's going for macro. Whereas it might be more, he might go for Hydra Bust more often on Circuit Breaker. So if he takes a mid base or one of the mineral only.
Yeah, I think on Blue Storm, I think I see a lot more pro Zergs taking the far base just because it has the gas. But I don't think that dictates, like you said, aggression or turtle. I think in general on a 2-player map, like I personally like going for 5-edge Hydra. So we see the Zealot kind of poking out.
Wait. Can we pause?
Yeah.
Okay, so this game, the probe stayed alive. Now this is something that a lot of good Protoss players do, is they send out either the 1st or 2nd Zealot.
Yeah.
Either alone or by themselves. Now Dragon last game didn't see it. So what, in your opinion, triggers
the Zealot move
this
out?
game I'm going to send the Zealot out alone like we're seeing here.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Dragon game, I'm not going to send it out alone. For me, I feel like last game, he lost the probe so early. So you don't want to just suicide it.
Sure.
But this game, the probe is still alive. Now he can send it out. And this time he's sending it out deep. Like it's just like in the Terran versus Zerg matchup where Terran pushes a little bit. And then they have the potential to attack the nap.
Yeah.
Or they can just turn around. He could have just sat it in the middle of the map.
Right.
And Larva won't know where it is, and he's got to start freaking out about it. But what's your opinion on what triggers sending the Zealot or not sending it?
Okay, yeah, so a couple things. So, number one, I think the build matters a lot. So, for example, I think if you want to go for like a 1-1 type build, you want to, if, like, in general, if you see an opening, go for it. But if you want to save your Zealots for that 7:30 timing, because remember that Dragon game, Dragon built up to 7 Zealots and he moved out, right? Or was it 6? I think it was 7.
It was 7.
Yeah, so for every Zealot that you lose, that makes your push significantly stronger, right? I mean weaker, right? So if you lost 2 Zealots and you try to move out with 5 Zealots, then like you don't really have much damage and power. So sometimes Protoss like to play more conservative with their early Zealots, depending on how aggressive they want to be with their build. So seeing that this first Zealot's out, it's either a product of, hey, I see an opening and I'm just going to take it because I think Zerg's out of position, right? Because the probe was there. He was scouting the link count. He knows the bulk of links were at the main base, so maybe he can surprise one drone here at the top left, but unfortunately there's no drone there. But another thing, and let me back up a little bit just to confirm, it's a very, very, very good idea to sneak a Zealot out if the Overlord is not in position, okay? So let me just double check to see like how that Zealot move out and if Larva saw it or not. Because if the Zerg sees the Zealot, the chances that Zealot does any damage drops, it just plummets, right? But let's see if Larva actually like moves his Overlord away.
He saw it.
Okay, he saw it. Okay, he did see it. Okay, never mind. So sometimes what you can do as a Protoss is that you can what's it called? You could send a Zealot in a different path so that the Overlord doesn't do it, and you can kind of hide it and just kind of make it pop out at a random time. That just kind of makes him panic. So Larva, too good. He sees this and responds correctly. So I actually imagine, if Jaehoon keeps,
Okay, you can go on.
No, I was just saying, like, I imagine if Jaehoon keeps sending Zealots out, like, sometimes you can move out with 2 or 3 Zealots. That tells me he's probably going for a Dark Templar, fast Templar build instead of a 1-1 timing.
Okay, so can we pause?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's just shown his zealot. Now look
Yep.
at the nat. So there's 4 lings being made. So they were preemptively made.
Yeah.
This is kind of what I was talking about with the Terran move out, where if Jaehoon did not show this zealot,
Right.
that's 4 lings that have been made for no reason because they're
Yeah.
not really going to help him later on.
Yeah.
So there is more to it than just sending the zealot out. It's going to deal implied damage here because these are not drones being made.
Right. Yeah.
But at the same time, you're talking about what Zerg now thinks it's DT tech. Is that what you said?
I'm not sure right now. Like, if you keep bleeding zealots, like for example, for here, I mean, 1 zealot is not nothing, but if they bleed more than like 2 or 3 zealots, I mean, it's not 100% sure that it's a DT tech, but I mean, the chances that they go for a 1-1 timing with speed zealots at 730 after they lost a few zealots is very, very, very unlikely, right? That's just suicide.
Yeah, I agree that if they're bleeding zealots, the timing's not going to happen, or it's going to be some kind of weird timing.
Right.
But I do like the move out.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if I would go this deep because I'm not that great with Protoss, but I just do want to point out that there is implied damage already done by sending this zealot out, whether it goes anywhere or not.
Yeah.
And that could potentially help your push because now instead of having these extra 2 drones or extra 2 Hydras, they're in these lings that are kind of useless.
Right, absolutely. So that's another huge thing there. Just making the zealot, like a lot of times, maybe not so much to a pro, but I think every Zerg is bothered by one of those zealot move outs because they can kind of screw up with their build, they can kind of throw you off guard, and like you can kind of do like mental damage. But we do see Jaehoon's going to send out his first Corsair. He's going to see exactly, okay, what is my opponent doing? Remember, so scouting is king here. He's making another cannon just in case because there's such a fat opening. But let's see what Jaehoon scouts. And he is going for that fast Templar Archives, like we said. So the Dragon game, he got his Templar Archives closer to like 640. But here, he got it at like 530-ish. So this is a really fast Templar build. This isn't going to be the 1-1 build. Otherwise, we would see leg upgrades. We would see plus 1 on the Forge starting way earlier, but he just started it right now. So let's see what he scouts.
Yeah, now we talked about how if you see the Spire not done, you can kill the Overlord.
This
now,
is so
has
risky.
Not scouted the main, but he's going to kill the Overlord anyways.
Yeah.
So he either has a good feeling about this, or he flat out just knows the timing of the Scourge. He probably just knows the timing of the Scourge. That he can get one and probably turn around.
I mean, likely you can guess they can take 1 and turn around, but I actually think that's not good practice. Now I'm not criticizing Jaehoon, but like if you're playing a guy like Tai 2 or something like that, then this would be imminent danger. You know what I mean? Like you don't actually know what the tech is. You don't know if this is going to be like some sort of weird lurker bust. But I mean, that doesn't happen as much in the pro scene, but a lot of times you really want to scout that Spire timing first before you do that. But maybe sometimes if you're playing against like a better Zerg, like sometimes you just go for like that kill and just assume, you know what I mean? So like you're kind of just gambling almost, but ooh, saves the Corsair.
But this style that we're seeing from Jaehoon, it's something that I'm going to say has been more recent because I didn't see it a couple months ago where, like you pointed out, the Templar Archive is insanely fast.
Yeah. So we see here.
Like ridiculously fast. So what do you think is the reason we're seeing this more often these days?
Yeah,
is it just because of the bust potential?
I think it has a lot to do like with the metagame, and also like I've seen in like the past 4 or 5 months, I don't know, 4 months ish, the 1-1 build actually has gotten weaker, at least in the pro scene, because 5-hatch Hydra really deals with 1-1 really well. Whereas if you get a really fast Dark Templar, sometimes you could kind of sneak that DT timing, like the Zergs don't really know how fast it's coming. But it also gives you map control, right? Because if you have the fast Dark Templar, they're forced to kind of camp at home, make sure like their mineral line's not getting attacked, and they can get a faster High Templar and Storm out, right? So it's safer against the 5-hatch Hydra bust, but it also gives you map control. I mean, it doesn't have like as much killing potential as like the 1-1 does, but it does give you really good map control. You still have your Corsairs such that like if they try to attack your base with the Hydras, then you can still counterattack with the Corsairs. So I actually think the Dark Templar opening or quicker Dark Templar is a little more popular these days, but I think if you're a lower level player, that 1-1 build is still going to work very beautifully.
Yeah, see, that's also my experience. I think if you're lower level,
Yeah.
not that the 1-1 build is bad because it's good, but
Yeah.
at I'm like a 2100 or something,
Yeah.
Protoss players, and it felt like every time I did 1-1-1, I just ran into a Hydra wall
Yeah.
because almost every Zerg, like they know,
Yeah.
hey, this is coming at 7:30 every
Yeah.
single time.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that more often is we're just seeing a deviation here
Yeah.
to not just let Zerg essentially blind counter you every time. On top of it, the Overlord, right? The Overlord was at Jaehoon's main the whole time, just like
Right.
in the Yaj game. And Zerg can see when your forge is spinning. If the forge is spinning,
Right.
right at 4:45 or something, you can
Mm-hmm.
be pretty positive 7:30 is coming.
Yeah.
Whereas if the forge isn't spinning, that
Yeah.
doesn't even necessarily mean that a 7:30 isn't coming.
Yeah.
It could still be a timing. It's just not with +1.
Yeah.
So I think this is more modern, and I think it's a little more a more, what's the word, like
It's more flexible, I think. You
yeah,
can do.
it's more surprising and more flexible
Yeah.
because you can do a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah. So you see here, I mean, like this, and again, this is a higher level play where like Jaehoon's kind of playing with this little Corsair DT thing, kind of BSU-esque almost, where he's gonna try to pick off like overlords and try to like deny vision, and try to see where he can find any openings. Because you see, like DT Sayer can work against anyone. Like you think that Zerg has, overlords, but look at this. His DT's just coming around here. Look how he's like keeping Larva busy, like at the natural, right, with his Corsairs. But he's killed every single Dark Templar at the third base. You see how crafty you can get with their Dark Templars? And this is Larva, guys. Like, don't always assume that, the Zerg is always like rock solid. It all comes down to how much you can influence and like kind of
Okay,
keep
but
your
can we
Zerg apart.
pause?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I agree with everything you're saying here.
Yeah.
But we got to keep in mind that we are watching a pro here, right?
Yeah.
You're sitting there microing your Sayers and microing your DTs, and your minerals goes up to 2,000.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
really matter if you killed the whole drone line because
Yeah.
you're probably going to get counterattacked and died. But Jaehoon, he just did a complete macro cycle. So
Yeah.
I agree with everything that's said, but you gotta kind of understand your limitations. So
Sure.
you need to push yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you're missing macro cycles for a minute, 2 minutes,
Right.
you should probably work on that more than getting harassment done with a DT.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% agree. Like, all of this is possible because they're a pro, and really, this is maybe for like a lower level player, it's probably more worth it for you to just be at home, making your probes, making your zealots, getting your build down. Because the most important thing is that 12-minute push out, like we talked about. So it's really just about keeping your priorities straight. And like if you have the APM, go for it. But at the same time, in general, you can find openings. But I think the point is that you can like dictate those openings yourself. Like you don't have to like necessarily say, oh, the Zerg is just making a mistake. Like Bisu made his career by forcing openings, just by keeping the Zerg busy.
Yeah, so now we were talking about 12-minute time, but see, I actually think this is a good timing for Jaehoon because we've already got like 10 zealots out. We're gonna have 5 or 6 more coming out. It's gonna be 16. If we look at the Hydra count, it's not that scary, especially when you have these Templars that have been banking energy. They're not freshly made. These are ones that have 1 or 2 storms. This could be a deadly attack. And see, now this 5-hatch Hydra build is completely different because you have more storm at a weirder point in the game.
Right. And this is kind of dangerous because he lost the Corsair, so a lot of times, really pro Zergs these days, if they whittle down your Corsair count, the Muta threat is very, very imminent, right? So that's why you have to keep your Corsairs alive to at least 5. And I would actually rebuild Corsairs if you lose too many because he's banking on the fact that these Corsairs are blocking the Mutas. Because watch, if Mutas hit the High Templar right here, then you're just kind of dead. So Jaehoon's going to try to take this third base. You know how we talked about, the third, taking the third so early is pretty, dangerous. I mean, he's got a lot of, units, but now we see this Muta harass right here, right?
There's the Muta harass that you're talking about. Now there's no real counter to them.
Right.
Like, the Dragoons aren't out.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a storm here, but to be honest, they're going to miss.
Yeah.
So unless these cannons get up, all of these Templars are probably going to be dead.
Yeah. Right, absolutely.
But I do want to say here, now again, Remember I was talking about in general, you should probably 6 to 8 gate follow
Yeah.
up. But this is a scenario where Jaehoon has decided that it's safe to expand.
Yeah. But Larva says otherwise. And again, this is kind of the danger. Like, for example, if we talked about earlier, in the Dragon replay, we said if you just stay in your base, get 8 gateways, move out with 150, and then move out, this wouldn't be happening, right? Like, Larva would do 0 damage if Jaehoon didn't expand, right? If Jaehoon just sat at home, he made 8 gateways, made like 20 Dragoons, and then moved out, then this would do absolutely nothing, right? Because he's in a turtling position. But the second you move out to take your 3rd base, you expose yourself to dying to Hydras or Mutas. Oof.
There were more Corsairs than I thought, but still, these 4 Mutas killed all 4 Templars without a single storm.
Yeah, look
maybe
at this.
One storm. But
Not
look,
even
now we have
storms.
Mass Hydra versus Zealots, but there's so many Zealots.
There's a lot of Zealots. And remember, Larva lost his entire drone line here, so I think that's also kind of dictating the fact that he wasn't able to, he got overpowered by Zealots. But in most scenarios, the Protoss would get overpowered here, losing all
and even
those
if they
DTs.
live, unless they live by a decent margin,
Right.
they're facing 6 hatch. There's
Right.
going to be a lot of Hydras reinforcing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just flat out not going to keep up, because if you make Templar, they're not going to have Storm because they got to build them up for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Or if you build Zealots, you're going to be running into a wall of Hydras most likely.
Right. Yeah, and this is kind of like we're kind of like a weird point for the Protoss. Like, sometimes you can get damage done by the with these Zealots running around, but like this is why you need to have order and structure, because like you try to do these things, you're not going to get anything done. Now your entire like timing attack is a little bit screwed up. So you lost your 4 to 6 High Templar, your Zealots are damaged. You got to rebuild up to 12 to 18 like we said, and then start going out with a whole bunch of Dragoons. We don't even have 8 gateways yet. So this is kind of the risk of taking a fast 3rd base, right? Because you risk taking all that damage, and the Mutas are still alive here. I mean, he's getting some good storms off, but he might lose a lot of High Templars in the process.
I
All
like
of
how he
them.
gets both of them, and the Mutas are alive.
There's only like 4 Mutas. It's crazy.
I know, it's crazy.
Zerg OP, man.
And remember, Larva lost his whole drone line, so
Yeah.
why are the supplies even?
Yeah, and that's the power of a good Zerg. They know how to drone, they know how to get back into the game, they know how to punish timing. So here we're at 12 minutes. Jaehoon is on 99 supply. That's because of all the craziness that happened. But again, what Jaehoon wants to do here is he wants to build up. And from here, it's actually really hard to come back against a pro level Zerg, because you need to rebuild your count storm to like 4 to 6. But I imagine Jaehoon's going to want to move out for a giant push, at least to attempt to bust Larva. And because that's all he's got, right? I mean, the Protoss always has a puncher's chance, but at this point, oh my god, the Muta's still doing damage!
Yeah, and they're still killing Templar, and that's like, oh my gosh, it's crazy how many Templars he's killed with these few Mutas.
Yeah. And this is why Corsairs are so important, right? Or I mean, you can go Dark Archon. I wouldn't recommend Dark Archon at a lower level, but Corsair, like, this is why you got to keep your Corsairs alive. Otherwise, this happens.
Yeah, and at this point in the game, you don't want to be remaking them, because every
Yeah.
one you remake is basically a Templar, and at this point, you don't really have the gas to be doing that. You really gotta keep them alive. You can't just, go in, kill Overlords, and then they all died because of what we're seeing right here. Literally 5 Mutas killed, what, 6 Templar?
Right.
That's insane damage.
Right, absolutely. And you see here, he's actually using a shuttle to house his High Templar, which is kind of funny. And actually, it's actually kind of smart, because it's like he doesn't have the, Corsair, so Larva can technically just go up to like, 12 Mutas and get all of his Templar sniped again. So again, like, I'm just going to pause right here. So what I'm going to show here is that, like, even though Jaehoon is getting crushed, every PvZ, when in doubt, like, you got to take a base, you got to build up to this, count here, and then you got to go for a giant push with Dragoons, right? So that's what Jaehoon's doing right now. Like, he knows he's behind, but he still knows, okay, I have Puncher's chance, I'm going to build up my Dragoon count, get my 4 to 6 High Templar, and try to go for a bust if we can. So we see some, Muta's moving out again, which is really annoying, but, the shuttle is actually doing work, though.
Yeah, but when you go for these pushes, like, you don't have to kill Zerg.
Yeah.
Your army's so strong, you
Right.
can just, like, let's say they're they've got mass sunken, mass spore, mass lurker.
Right.
You don't have to feel obligated to attack into that.
Yeah.
You can just take your side of the map.
Right.
It's not like, oh, I hit this time or this timing and now it's go time and okay, well, I have to go and kill them otherwise.
No,
You
yeah.
can transition.
Right. Absolutely, because it's like in general, like you don't want to think.
Who's watching this? Like, did we just watch the observers just get picked off, and now
Yeah.
this is going to shut down the entire timing because
Yeah.
we have none left?
Yeah,
Well, he's
that's-
going to go anyways, and this is going to be a massacre, I imagine.
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was disgusting. I mean, that's how good Larva is. He just walks in there and kills the observer. But yeah, so like I would always say for Protoss out there with this 2-0 timing, don't think of it as an all-in. Think of it as a push to pressure the Zerg. If you kill them, great. But if not, you can still do a lot of damage, get a lot of value with Storm and all that
Whole
stuff.
lurker.
Oh my god. Yeah. Okay, this is not ideal. Obviously this isn't the kind of attack that we want to see because we lost the observer, to be honest. But he's going to move back. He's going to try to regather and see what he can do. He's also, Jaeyun's kind of attacking the expansion, which is really nice here if you look at the natural. Keeping him busy. And usually when you keep Zerg busy, that's a good time to kind of try to bust the Zerg because they're out of position. And so let's see if Jaehoon can actually get back in this game with with these zealots inside the main base. So I think at this point, Jaehoon is also basically all in. Like I think he knows he's behind.
Yeah. He's not taking a fourth base. Is mineral. It's a mineral only third base. So we don't have the Templar count. We don't have defensive Reavers anywhere. This is 100% all in. And on top of it, Larva has half the map already.
Right. Yeah. So Jaehoon's gonna try to move in here, and again, guys, this part of the map is probably not as important, but just because I think Jaehoon's just kind of like, okay, well, this is all I've got. I'm gonna try to do this counterattack, blah blah blah, but let's see what damage you can get done. But it looks like he's just gonna get smashed. And I think losing his zealots, that's critical because then you have nothing to defend your dragoons with. So I'm just gonna fast forward this and just go straight to the end because I think Jaehoon's toast.
Yeah, there's just too much Zerg. Hydras are so crazy strong, and then we've got Hive.
Right.
And they're upgraded lings, and we have no armor. We have no shields.
Ouch.
We don't even really. Okay, we've got a decent amount of storms, but
right.
I mean, look at.
No, yeah.
Look at it. It's just a massacre.
No. Yeah. So this is gonna be GG. So, I mean, again, the only reason why I showed this replay was because it's the the same replay I showed last week. I wanted to show it from the Protoss perspective. And it's kind of just what Protoss is thinking. Even if Protoss is behind, like it's always good to have a plan, right? Like if you don't have a plan at a certain point in the game, that's when you start playing like you're lost. Like Jaehoon, he got rolled, but he still had a plan, right? Like he still said, okay, I'm all in. I've got 10 gateways. I'm gonna go for like my bus timing and stuff like that. But ultimately, the Mu does did too much damage, and really that's kind of just a lesson to say like, okay, if you take your third base, you put yourself at risk. If you lose your Corsairs, you put yourself at risk. So it's really just kind of like, hey, you have to, dot all your I's and, cross all your T's and make sure you don't get busted by all that stuff. But overall, good games played. I mean, I think the Dragon 1-1 game was a lot more representative of what we're trying to do here. But, yeah, I mean, here we've completed the replay section, I believe, unless we got one. No, I don't think we got one, but we've completed the replays. And let me connect the camera really quick so that we can go into some talk show modes. Actually, might need a bit of time to set up the technical aspect, but let me add video. Actually, I don't need to turn on video, right? You can turn on video for me. And the quality of this, overlay might not be the best, but hold on, let's get this set up.
I turn on video?
Yeah, can you turn on video for me?
Oh, yeah.
And let me just try to grab that. Let's see if I can get ya. All right, there you are.
There I am.
There you are. There he is. Okay, it's not. I don't have the best overlay here, guys. I'm still ghetto, but hopefully this is okay. But all right, so we got to talk a lot about modern day PvZ in those replays, right? So a lot of good games, a lot of structure, right? Like a lot of like, you know, the 1-1 builds. I know there's a lot of other builds out there that we haven't gone through. You know, there's just a variety of so many different Protoss builds, but at this time I do want to kind of go into more of a, you know, the talk show segment where, again, I know last time I got to pick your brain about a lot of like good questions about the history of Starcraft, but I also just want to ask you again, like let's talk about this evolution of the PvZ meta. Like I know you don't play Protoss or Zerg, but you know, you've been around all the top players back in the day 10, 15 years ago, but like how has this matchup evolved to where it is now? And I also want to talk about, you know, do you believe that this matchup is imbalanced? And we'll talk about that afterwards. But I also want to see, were there periods of time where you saw things, you know, Zerg's having a lot of trouble, or I don't know, what was the strategies back in the day? Give us a timeline now again.
Historically, it's been Zerg favored. I would say 60-40, like just in general, across timelines.
Yeah.
Until Bisu, I guess it was like 60-40 was about it. But if we want to go all the way back to like when I initially played, so 98, 99,
right,
there was, I'm gonna be honest, there was actually a lot of builds that you see these days you saw back then, obviously not as mapped out, which is funny to me because you would think there's got to be something different. Really the only difference is the timings and the macro, but really the main build, we have to remember though, there's one map. Okay, I don't want people to forget this. It's Lost Temple. Like we don't have Fighting Spirit. There's no Circuit Breaker. It's every game was Lost Temple. Okay, you gotta keep this in mind. So really, the main build was 2-gate. Whether it was proxy 2-gate or in your base 2-gate, it was 2-gate. Now that was just pure zealots, and you have to remember back then, what was the Zerg build? 9-pool was probably the build 50% of the time. And then 12 hatch. Probably 50% of the time. There was not really overpool. It was not really 12 pool. It was one of those two, really. And another key difference here was you did not see third bases from Zerg. It was either 2-hatch Hydra or 3-hatch Hydra. People were probably like losing their mind. Like 2-hatch Hydra? Yes. 2-hatch Hydra.
2-hatch Hydra.
We start thinking about players back then like Maynard, PH Jester. People have no clue who that is, but big 2-hatch Hydra players, and you know, zealots were really, it was just mass zealot at that point. You know? People like Gur would experiment because when they would experiment going like Nexus or maybe Gate Nexus or Forge Nexus, and they were able to keep up despite having, like, you know, poor probe saturation and poor macro because of how all in the Zergs were. Where, you know, even if you build 5 cannons to survive, you're still okay because the Zerg player's on 2-hatch. So there are a lot of builds that I see these days, like what we just saw with the Forge expand and Gate expand. Those builds are very old for Protoss. But it's just the macro is different. Now, I do want to go back to 2-gate also. There's other obvious variations with it, but one of the key, I guess I'm going to say key, like revelations for Protoss back then was, if I mix in a probe with the Zealot, I start two-shotting Lings. So that was a big deal for a long time. If you got a hold of very old VODs or replays, maybe not even replays, because the replays weren't even in the game back then, where Gur just crushing people with a couple zealots and 3 probes, you just saw Lings melt. It was, Zergs felt so helpless that almost all the time they would go 12-hatch. But on Lost Temple, because the hatchery, if you place it at the nat, doesn't block the ramp, you would see hatches at the ramps.
I remember that. I remember that because it's like, you know, you didn't like at the natural of Lost Temple. And I don't know if this was for all the positions, but like the natural and the ramp was like it doesn't cover the ramp, right? So like you almost had to make a hatchery like on the ramp or at the bottom of the ramp, defend it, and then take your base, I guess. Like, and that was kind of so ridiculous. But I mean, I feel like in general, you know, I played back then too, not at a high level, but 2-gate was so freaking hard to deal with. I mean, like hard to like just even stop, right? And it's so obnoxious because like they start two gating and then they start to expand behind it, or sometimes they'll just go into like Corsair tech really fast, and it's like, oh my gosh, is he going for an expansion? Is he like doing all these things? So I don't know. It was so obnoxious to deal with. But like, when was that turning point? Like, when was it like just when did Zerg start to figure out, okay, like how do I, like, this is how to deal with two gate? What was that solution? When did that happen? And when did we start to see kind of a transition into maybe even like one gate tech off one base?
So this is a phase that I'm not sure exactly when, but I think once Zergs realized that 3 hatch was much better than 2 hatch, and when they started figuring out how to balance their ling count in the early game to fight how many zealots were coming, and on top of it they got better at picking off the probe, I think that's when we saw more transitions for Protoss.
Right.
I still don't think we were at the point for Protoss where they were expanding. I still think we were still doing 1 base builds, so 2 gate. We might have seen builds like 1 gate, Goon Reaver, like we've seen a few times recently in some of the BSL and Havoc and stuff like that. But we were still not at the point where Protoss were expanding. But again, you have to realize map was Lost Temple. If you get 12 on Lost Temple, you can't build a Nexus because your cannons aren't going to block the choke.
Yeah.
So people were still 1 basing back then. It was only, I'm going to say it was only once we got a different map than Lost Temple that we saw the switch to start expanding more. But don't quote me on that because I didn't play Protoss in that time, so like,
I see. So,
I can't remember.
So you're saying it's a lot of it's kind of map dependent, right? So like,
I definitely think it's map dependent because like, if people think it's bad to play Fighting Spirit all the time or Circuit Breaker all the time, you don't know what that is. It was 1 map. I'm not kidding.
Yeah. And Lost Temple is a bad map too, but okay, so you have some new maps coming in. I mean, I don't know the exact timeline, but let's say I think some more reasonable maps, like I think like Luna, right? And there was like Python, other kinds of maps like that come out. I think the meta was still Protoss trying to go for either 2 gateway, really go with their Zealot micro, or going for like that 1 gate build. But was there a point again? And I may have also answered this, but like where I'm trying to go with this question is like, was there a point where Zerg just like solved it? And also, if it worked back then, why don't people do it now? I think I saw somebody in the chat earlier today asking why can't Protoss
do 2 gate,
2 gate or 1 gate, 1 base anymore? I mean, now like it's it's still around every now and then, right? But like, what do you think is the reason why? Like, is it not viable or is it just a inferior
Well, it's
option?
viable.
Okay.
But you have like no backup plan really. Like, let's say you try and macro out of it. Well, Zerg most likely has a hatchery at their nat probably, right? And then they're probably going to take a 3rd base. So now you're kind of facing 3 base when you're on 1 base for a long time. It's kind of hard to keep up, right? Like, you see, the reason you have these expansions is because you just flat out can't keep up with the macro from Zerg. Like that, I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, that's just across the board in all matchups. Like Terran versus Zerg, you got to have an expansion these days versus Zerg to keep up. Terran versus Protoss, you got to have an expansion to keep up. Like, you have to have the econ because unless you like hit that really small window where the econ hasn't kicked in for the other player, it's almost an auto win for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's fast forward now. I mean, you said that there were some fast expand builds even back in the day, right? Like, there were Protoss trying it. Like, they may not have mapped out the builds as much, to make it, exactly viable. They might not have had the best SimCity. And so they may have not known like what we know now, and also the maps weren't very friendly, right? They used to have like gigantic chokes and all that crap. Even Python was a terrible map to honestly like even go for a fast expand because of that big choke. But then you got a guy like Bisu. I mean, let's talk about Bisu. Like, let's talk about like his revolution of the entire matchup. Like, what was it that Bisu found out? Like, I guess it was the fast expand, but like, what was the fundamental thing that Bisu saw that other Protoss didn't at the time, and how did he kind of revolutionize that matchup around that 2008-2009 time?
Well, okay, so before Bisu there's Nara, right?
Okay.
And I'll say that he's the one that really got the
Ooh.
Forge Expand build going. Again, I'm not completely certain on that, but when I think of Forge Expand before Bisu, that name comes to mind. So I'm going to go with him as being the one to really have gotten that going. But again, the problem is Zerg's econ goes unhindered. Like, from your point of view, let's say you don't know about the current meta, and we're not 20 years in the future, but let's say you see a Protoss player opening with Forge, right? And you have decent knowledge of the game. If I'm a Zerg, or if you're a Zerg, what would you do in that scenario? You would just build a lot of drones, right?
Yeah.
Right. So your econ's going to start skyrocketing.
Right.
So I think the problem here for Nara and them was the econ is just still out of control for Zerg, where Bisu figured out, like, okay, I don't necessarily have to kill you with Sayer DT, but I can at least force you to build something other than drones, where we're not having 80 drones, at the 8-minute mark.
Yeah.
We're having something more reasonable that I can keep up with.
Right.
Like 50, 60 or something.
Yeah, and he showed that power of the Corsair DT, and it's actually really funny that we think about it. And this is something I just thought about right now, right? Like, we've had like this kind of a lot of phases in PvZ in more recent years where we saw the rise of the 1-1 attack with a lot of Corsairs and stuff. And now we're kind of going back into a trend of more Templar openings rather than the fast, Zealots. But back in the day when BC was doing it, like, he was doing a ton of damage with one Dark Templar. He's like, he figured out, oh, you Zergs are taking, 2 bases, and sometimes they even take 3 bases. We're like, are you kidding me? Like, you're not allowed to do that. He's saying, well, if you do that, I'm going to have this invisible unit that walks around, that if I kill one Overlord with my Corsairs, then all of a sudden you're in a lot of trouble, right? So he figured out that you can get so much map control with his multitask that you can punish a Zerg, slow them down, not necessarily kill them. And I think that's what changed it all, right? Like, the fact that you can do so much damage with so little units, but high-tech units, I think that was kind of one of the biggest turning points in PvZ in general.
Yeah, like you said, it wasn't a big resource commitment for him to, I'm going to call it, balance out the state of the game. Whereas, let's say, I'm just going to throw out a number here. Let's say the DT did equal damage to something like 20 Zealots, like, just in terms of how much the Zerg has to respond. Well, you're committing way less with that one DT than 20 Zealots, right? That's a huge commitment from you. So
right.
Yeah, I agree that the smaller commitment from Bisu is really what changed it. And then Protoss can keep up. They can go to mid game, and for a long time, Protoss mid game. So I played Zerg for a long time. I felt like when Protoss got to that ridiculous Templar count or Reaver count, it almost felt helpless as Zerg.
Yeah.
Because you have mass Hydras, mass Lings. How do you attack into it? It's like impossible. The storms are endless. They got cannons. They got Reaver support. It's a nightmare.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, definitely. But I mean, I think I guess kind of going more to like the modern day. It's like, I feel like, especially after BC went to the military, it's almost as though there's no Protoss hero. I mean, like, against Zerg, does Protoss, like, in your opinion, just general question, does Protoss have an answer for Zerg, whether it's like a player or a strategy right now, in your opinion, like in the next ASL? How well are Protoss going to do against the Zergs?
Okay, so I want to preface that when I started playing again 2 years ago, there was the Gateway Expand build that I saw Bisu use a lot. He just, like, rally Zealots nonstop. I remember this one game in particular versus Hero. I was literally watching one gate get rallied across the map, and a Zerg could not stop it. I was like, what? Like, what has happened where Zerg can't stop one gate rally Zealot? But then Zergs got better, and they start shutting it down. And now, we have these timings from Protoss, 7:30 timing. We've been seeing for months or even years now. But now, like we said earlier, it seems like Zergs just know it's coming every time. They're always prepared for the 7:30 timing. And then it gets shut down completely. Protoss didn't do any real damage. I think the real point of the build is just like what we talked about with Bisu's build, is it's to keep the Zerg in check.
Yeah.
But now sure they're in check, but they're still like cutting a little bit of corners so they can just survive, and then their econ is still exploding. And then because of the lack of vision for Protoss, like they don't have comsat, right? So they can't just scan and be like, oh, well, he's playing a macro game, right? They've got to take a guess on what's happening, and Zerg can do so many things. They can power, they can kill you.
Yeah.
I think it's just really a nightmare for Protoss these days. And on top of it, the game is so difficult. Everybody's so good at the game that it's hard to innovate. Like, I don't know how else to word it. It's just hard to come up with a new build because then you have to come up with new timings, and then it gets into weird situations. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Protoss is just in a weird spot.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily because Bisu's gone. It's just the nature of the game because of how good everyone is in general.
Yeah, and I also think one thing that surprised me when I came back from to Remastered is the prevalence of 3-hatch Hydra bots, right? Like back then, I mean that was always a thing, right? Like the 3-hatch Hydra bots was always a thing, but I'm like, geez, like so many people are doing this now, and it's almost like the meta is changing so much. I think for a lot of matchups, actually, ZVT especially, we talked about that a few weeks ago. ZVP2, it's almost becoming kind of poker-esque, right? It's like for the pros, it's when I see Sulky or anyone else, like they throw in 3-hatch Hydra Bus enough times to make the Protoss kind of have to go into that guessing game, right? Like they kind of keep Protoss in the dark. They're kind of like, hey, if you don't block this Hydra, bus or anything like that, then you're gonna die X percentage of the games because I'm gonna do this. And so it's almost like poker, right? You're almost like kind of balancing. You're almost like bluffing just enough times and actually going for the bus. But that 3-hatch Hydra, I mean, it's so powerful against Zergs, and even pros pull it off so many times, and in all of the recent games, and Protoss just doesn't have an answer unless they really, really scout it.
Yeah, but it's just so hard to keep the probe alive.
Yeah.
And then if they keep the probe alive, they're just not going to do it, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. If they keep the probe alive, they can just transition to a regular game, and that doesn't necessarily... So it's almost like it can be reactionary, too. So as a Zerg player myself, I know that you can actually get a Hydra Den at about 40-50% layer. You can still go for a bust, right? Like, and that's when Protoss still... A lot of times they might see layer, okay, 5-hatch Hydra or whatever, and then all of a sudden the Hydra show up your door, and you have nothing to defend it. So it's kind of a nightmare for Protoss to deal with. But
yeah, see, I agree with this, and I think I talked about this last time I was on, that I was not really a fan of effort for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But effort has upped his skill so much. But what I do like about effort is like what you just said, where even though the layer is building and Protoss sees it, effort has the potential to just bust you, right? And we saw it versus Flash in the ASL, right? He's going like Ling Muta constantly, and then all of a sudden, because he knows you're going to build something to counter Ling Muta, he shows up with 12 Hydras, and it's like, what? Where did those come from? So that's the power of Zerg, because they can tech switch on the dot, right? Unlike Protoss or Terran, if I want to build some kind of tech switch, like let's say I want to build factory units now, I got to actually build the factories, but everything can come out of the hatcheries. So I think that Zergs are getting smarter in that sense. Their macro's better, so that makes it even more deadly. And then again, the vision issue. You don't know what's coming for a long time. Like what we just saw versus Jaehoon. He did so much damage with that DT. Like, I was going to point out before he even did it, like this seems like a good point, a good example of, hey, the game has gone favorable for you. You can take a third base. And Larva's like, nope. No, you're building those Templars. Guess what does not hit air? Zealots and Templar, they don't hit air. So I'm just going to go kill those. And this is off of losing like 15 drones.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah. That's why it's becoming so much more, and I feel like I'm gonna apologize on behalf of all of our Protoss viewers that came here to have a little bit of hope about the looming Zergs in the future. But I mean, this is all to say, like, because Zerg has so many different options for different tech switches, bus, going standard macro, turtling, and all that thing. this is why studying is so important for Protoss, right? Like one of the reasons why like my PvZ is actually decent. You know, I'm not a top level PvZ, but it's because I know what the Zerg is thinking, right? I know how to look at a build and read it and respond, right? Like a lot of times I might not, know 100%, but I could say with 70-80% certainty, I'm pretty sure I know what the Zerg is doing. Like I can get into the mind of the Zerg, and I think that's what a lot of the strong Protoss try to do. And it's like if you don't study the right responses, if you don't practice, keeping that probe alive, scouting, responding the right way, then Zerg is going to punish you. So I think really the message here, I think more than any other matchup, I know, vision is so important, but PvZ, you have to know what your opponent is doing. You just have to. And that's why Protoss go for those Corsairs. And again, even if you get the Corsair, scout before you kill that Overlord. Like the scouting information is so much better, and just learning the different scenarios and all that stuff. But okay, but anyways,
wait. So that's my opinion. What's your opinion in the current state
of PvZ?
Yeah.
Oh man, I actually.
What do you think the future is going to be also?
Well, the future. Okay. Well, I think I did talk to Rain at BlizzCon. I was with a couple people. We're doing kind of like a post game interview. We asked them a question about, hey, like, and I didn't ask the question. I thought the question was a little bit offensive. Basically, the question was saying, well, without Bisu around, how are Protoss going to deal with the Zergs these days, right? And I could kind of see, like, it wasn't like Raiden was like, offended or anything like that, but like, you can see Raiden was saying, well, as long as the map pool is reasonable, like he says it's definitely doable. So you can see a lot of confidence in Raiden's game. I think Raiden is one of like the most solid Protosses out there. He did get rolled by effort, but he is still a very reliable Protoss. I know somebody like somebody in the chat, I think also talked about Mini also being a very creative Protoss. Like I think Mini's a very volatile player though. Like he's super good in these practice games. He's super crafty. He's actually a really creative Protoss. Like you said, it's hard to innovate, but he has these weird builds. Like I think I saw it first. I think Sulky, where he goes for like this in base 2-gate, one base 2-gate, and he's constantly pressuring. Like he's constantly making Sulky guess how many Lings and how many Sunkens he needs to defend, right? Because he can just walk out with like 14 slow Zealots, right? And it's like he's actually putting the pressure on the Zerg to make the decision on how many defenses to make, and he's kind of dictating it in his favor. Whereas if you go Forge Fast Expand, like a lot of times Zerg is kind of dictating the tempo a lot. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of good players out there, but I think it's going to be tough because I think a lot of the top Protoss, you can talk about a guy like, who else is there? Jeez, like Best, Snow. Gosh, guys, help me. Who are some other top Protoss players that I'm missing here?
Harangi.
Oh, gosh.
Shuttle.
Well, Shuttle's gone, right? He went to the army. I feel like we're missing someone. Rain, Snow, Mini.
Rain, Snow, Mini,
Best.
Harangi, Shuttle, Best.
That's it? Oh gosh, okay. I mean, Snow is okay at PvZ. Best is, he's okay at PvZ. Those other guys, I mean, like, I think they have, like, potential, but, I mean, like, I'm thinking about Larva, I'm thinking about Effort, I'm thinking about Sulky. I'm like, these guys are so good. I know we lost Hero for the Zergs, but, someone says I Am Mong. I Am Mong was actually a pretty good player. I thought he would be, I Am Mong is also aka Gumchi, like he says in the chat, but I thought he would actually have a lot of potential, but I think he kind of fell off the radar for a little bit. I don't know if he like stopped playing or anything like that, but to answer your question, I think the future is a little bleak in PvZ, at least until, I don't even know if Bisu can come back and solve it, because I think Zergs have gotten so good at that macroing, like learning when to drone, learning how to mass. I think it all comes down to the maps, right? Like I think if the maps can come in, like we saw in ASL 5, those maps were not very fun for Zerg, right? So it's all gonna come down to the maps, and I think a guy like Rain is gonna be, kind of our savior, and for the future of the builds, I actually don't know. Like I do see a lot more 2 Stargate played than I used to these days, which can be good, but it's so hard to. I don't know. I know that Dark Archon build is also very popular these days, which is a good answer to the prevalence of the Muta switch, but I don't know that I necessarily see anything changing dramatically. Like, yeah, maybe we'll see some more Dark Archons, maybe we see some more 2-star gate play, but, I still see on standard maps Protoss having trouble with Zergs
Okay.
in the next year.
Yeah, so I agree that Zerg is having. I mean, I talked about it last time that Zerg's kind of having like a revolution right now. I think
Yeah.
they're peaking really hard. I talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
They're. I mean, I brought it back to talking about how you're putting hatches next to each other. That's my main issue with Zerg for all time was how people macroed was just because of how difficult it was to macro. Like you could be an amazing Zerg, but you're still not reaching that full potential, right? Because if I watch a replay, there's going to be like 10 larvae just sitting there 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Not being macro. But now that stuff is all together, the macro is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's out of this world now. But I agree that it looks bleak for Protoss, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, we just watched games, right, where Zerg just won at Lair Tech.
Yeah.
So we're not even talking late game. So
Right.
So what is your opinion on this current well, you seem to think that it's not going to work. See, I also don't like the current state of Protoss. It's like gateway man style, right? You see a lot of, it's true though. You see gateway units for a very long time, and Storm is great and all, but once Plague comes out, like you're watching Protoss players die at a Lair Tech. Once Plague comes out, the main issue for Protoss is half your HP is gone.
Yeah.
Or more. The Zealot for a long time had 80 shields, 80 health.
Yeah.
But then that got changed to 60 shields, 100 health, because Zealots were dying too fast because, as we know, shields take full damage, whereas armor, they had one armor and they take not 100% all the time.
Right.
So now that change is actually hurting Protoss because they have less shields, and now when they get plagued, goodbye Zealots instantly. So this gateway man style, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I feel like you either are like got a big lead like what Dragon did, where it kind of just snowballs really hard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But if it goes even-ish, where even Jaehoon had a big lead, you're kind of setting up for disaster, where you have all these gateway units that get plagued, and then what do? Then Protoss is like camping the whole time. So I don't really like that style. If I was to make like a prediction, but I think if you're gonna do this gateway man style, I like what I see a few players do sometimes is they mix in a Reaver with their push. And if you have two Reavers with a push, it's just two Reavers, but the thing is these pro players can micro the shuttle so well, the shuttle never dies. Literally never dies. And then the Reaver just packs so much AoE constantly. It's not like Storm, where it's just kind of a one-time thing. It's just constant AoE damage. So I think stuff like that could come back.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree, That Reaver push is good.
And I also think that, like I was talking about when I played Zerg a long time ago, Protoss late game, the Storms, Maelstrom, Reavers just defensively, I know people are gonna I think I've talked to TT1, he kind of laughed at like carriers and arbiters and stuff like that. But if it goes split map for Protoss and they camp, similar to like mech transition for Terran vs Zerg, where I mean, it's almost identical, right? Like when you mech transition, you have up until about the 20-minute mark versus Zerg to be very strong. So it's similar to like gateway man style with the Reaver. You have opportunities to deal crippling damage with this attack. But once it's done, you need to start camping. Now we see Protoss is camping, but they're still on that gateway man style with Reavers. I think you could see more high-tech units like Arbiter or Carriers or D-Web, because those units are unreal cost efficient. But we don't see that often. We don't have the innovators like that. I've seen a few games where Reigns pulled it off on big maps like Gladiator. I remember a game versus Larva. It was an hour-long game. It was amazing, but he had everything. He had Maelstrom. Mind control is great. You start mind controlling queens or defilers, and then all of a sudden, or lurkers even. And then they have carriers sitting behind cannons. Like, how do you attack it as Zerg? So I think we might see either more stronger timings, not
Yeah.
just gateway man,
Right.
or we're just going to see more passive mech switch type-esque builds where they're camping for the majority of the game. But I know, people play this game for fun. They don't play to sit there and camp in their base for 50 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if we're going to see that.
Yeah, I think definitely that's always been a thing. Just like late game, if you can get to a split map scenario, right? Like on a map like Circuit Breakers, that's almost like not impossible, but a lot harder to do. Like let's say on like Fighting Spirit, right? I think it's easier to get split map on Fighting Spirit, but on Circuit Breakers, like you have to assume that you have even number of bases and you don't have to be offensive anymore. So like whereas like on Circuit Breakers, you might quote unquote split the map, but there's so many of these little mineral bases and additional bases that Zerg can take that if you just sit there and defend, then like you'll just get outmined. But if you can split it with the same number of bases and then you just kind of sit there with like arbiters and storms and corsairs and stuff, I've lost games where I just the Protoss was sat there and I kept trying to bust him, even if I had 1 or 2 extra bases, and I just lost. And it's just like I think that can definitely be a strategy. I think it's just a matter of even getting there, right? Like a lot of Protoss have a hard time getting out of the early game or even the mid game. So I think if they find a way to get there, play a little more defensive, I don't know, definitely utilize things like drops or even kind of reavers, like you said. We can see something. I know I talked to Beast a few weeks back, and he was also talking about how reavers, kind of like a 3-base reaver push, was also kind of popular, at least in PvZ these days, especially against Turtle Zergs. And so I think that's also a really neat way to play. But by the way, and we'll move on to the next topic soon, but just as a little beacon of hope for like the Protoss viewers here, I think in general, like we talk about this state of PvZ, and I don't want us to kind of like think it's it's such an imba matchup or something like that, but I think we're talking about like the pro levels, right? Like I know it's still hard at the lower levels, but at the same time, I think if you focus on like the 7:30 timing, the 12-minute timings, you kind of stick to your guns, execute that really well. I still think, very honestly, if you can pull off a 2-0 timing, macro your Dragoons, macro your High Templar, keep your Zealots back, macro and all those things, you can actually get easily up to 2,000 MMR. So it's like, I know, for like, we're not saying it's just hopeless. Every time you lose, don't just say, oh, Z overpowered, blah, blah, blah. But like, there's so many things you can do to still get to a very high, very respectable level. But, we're just talking about the state of the pro scene, which is completely different to, 1700 MMR, right? Like, if you're complaining about imbalances at 1700 MMR, that's not, to be honest with you, that's just like, you just have to get better. So it's like, I don't want to kind of encourage like this, oh, it's just a imbalanced matchup, but maybe it is, but like I would say it's more slight than like something crazy. But
yeah, it's hard for sure. But I mean, even I got 2,000.
Yeah.
I literally watched 3 shuttle VODs.
Yeah.
Saw initial build orders, and then just went into single player.
Yeah.
And saw how difficult. I don't mean this ironically. I don't mean this not genuinely. Like it's hard to keep building pylons as Protoss because the fly goes up so fast, and you got to build gates. Yeah. Like if you just macro hunt and you have decent like game sense, you can get 2,000 or S rank for sure because
absolutely.
I don't know what I'm doing. I just build units.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to move on to the next topic, and then, by the way, if you guys have any questions, I think I had a couple of questions up there, if I go back in the chat, but if you guys want to ask any questions right now for myself or Nyoken, feel free to ask as we go through this last topic, and we'll try to answer before we cut the stream, but I do want to talk about some current events. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I think one thing that was really interesting was, obviously, BSL 6 has been live. If you guys don't know what that is, that's Bombastic Star League. It's held by, really probably the top organizer right now, Zero. And the ladder stage is live. You basically just make a BSL 6 tag. You go ladder. You got to make the top, X number of players after about a month. And so I think there's a couple of weeks left, but he also kind of supplements the BSL, the main BSL, with like these kind of separate little mini events. And I think one thing that's really cool is like this Nation Wars thing. Did you get a chance to like look at that?
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? And also like I don't know what who do you think is that? Let's just get some talk going about USA. Like who's gonna be on Team USA? You know, and do we have a good shot like winning this whole Nation Wars thing?
Well, of course we have a good shot. We won the last one, right? I don't know if it's just the people laddering because,
Yeah.
for example, I'm not laddering since
Okay.
I'm already in Pro League.
Yeah.
So,
Oh.
you know, are they just going to take all the Pro League players? Now, to me, that seems like it might be kind of counterintuitive. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know because I don't know what the goal of the Nation War is. Is it to find new players
Yeah.
for your turn for your to play, or are we
Right.
just going to have the best of the best again? Because if it's just the best of the best again, you know, there's Bonnet and Koget. They're already in Pro League, I think, right? So they don't even
Excuse
have
me.
to ladder, and that's already 2 players for Poland.
Yeah.
Right, so then there's only 3 slots, but
Yeah.
I still like it because it's still gonna, you know, there's still 3 potential spots open, and if you're an up-and-comer or you're wondering how can I get into a Nation War, or how can I get my name out there, this
Yeah.
is a good opportunity
Yeah.
for you, for sure.
Right. Yeah, and I think just to kind of like take a step back, and I forgot, maybe everyone here doesn't even know about the Nation Wars, but apparently what happens is that I guess on January 15th, which is like a week from now, they're going to go on to the BSL 6 ladder stage. They're going to pick the top 5 players with the MMR, you know, and then, you know, form basically a 5-man team. And then there's going to be like a single elimination bracket with countries going against each other, playing 3 1-on-1s, 1 2-on-2, which I found really interesting, and then an ace match if needed. So, yeah, I thought that's pretty cool. Again, I actually, yeah, you bring up a good point, because I realized I was going to ask you why you're not laddering for BSL 6, but then you were the runner-up for the Chobo League, and you lost to Nalgrim in a 7-game that went to 7 games, and that was probably one of the best PvZ matchups I've seen. So if you guys want to go back to one of Zero's VODs, you can actually see you know, Nalgrim versus Nyoken in an epic 7-game series. I mean, that was nail biting.
Yeah.
But anyways, I mean, like, so just kind of getting your opinion, I mean, on ladder and stuff, and just, you know, who do you think are kind of like you know, like, excluding us, like, who do you think are just like, you know, the top USA players? Like, who's up and coming? Like, are there up and coming players? Do you think it's kind of the same story? Like, I don't know. Who would you say
the
they
thing
are?
is when I ladder, I don't necessarily look to see where they're from.
Yeah.
So I play good players, of course, but specifically USA, I'm not really sure, because
Okay.
I probably would have known about them by now from either you or TT1 or somebody.
Yeah.
So as far as up and coming USA players, I don't know. And then, you know, there are USA players, but they're actually Koreans living in the US. So
Yeah.
for example, like Boa White, right? Like,
Yeah.
Boa White is 2400 rank.
Yeah.
That would be one of the highest players
Right.
in the US. So
Yeah.
you would go for him, right? But he's Korean, so does that really count? I mean, it would depend, I guess.
Right.
So for USA players who's up and coming, I mean,
No,
I don't know really.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if we want to be like honest here, like Tim is a good up
Tim
and coming player.
is a good Protoss,
right?
yeah.
He placed, I think he's near S now, right? Like, maybe he's not S, but he has the potential to get to S, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And he could be one of the top 5,
Yeah.
for sure. But like, I see people, like, I don't want people to think there's no good USA players. It's just
Right.
hard to play because I just queue ladder. I don't look
Yeah.
up somebody afterwards
Right.
to see if they're from America.
Yeah. So I think just kind of looking right now, just on the ladder list.
Yeah, but for like other countries, right? So IRK, right? I don't know. I didn't know IRK, but then I played Nalgrim, right? And
Yeah.
Nalgrim's great. And
Yeah.
then I've played a few IRK players on the ladder, and they were great too.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they didn't play in EU versus NA, right?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
like I just off the top of my head, there's Unko. I think Unko is in IRK.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Kami.
Tommy?
Who else? Yeah, Kami Zerg.
Oh,
There's
Kami.
IRK,
Yeah.
IRK Jerry K, I think.
Yeah, something
Right?
like that.
So these are all players that did not play in EU versus NA. But when I
Right.
play them on ladder, they're very good.
Yeah.
And I know they're high ranked. I think Jerry K was even almost 2300, which is
Yeah.
damn high.
Right.
So those players you could look out for.
Yeah.
But that's just one team. See, so I'm not sure who else in EU, but
Yeah.
those came to mind. But for specifically US, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, looking at the standings right now, I think the top rated, at least in BSL, and for BSL, like for me personally, I am on BSL 6, but I specifically laddered up to the MMR right before the S rank cutoff, and that's where I stopped because I hate getting decayed and I don't like playing so many games each week. So I think a lot of players in general, not just me, but a lot of everyone else, like they tend to just wait for the last week of ladder, just grind games, get to the top 24 or whatever. So we don't know exactly everyone that's going to shake out, but right now I see Beast Jaehoon is 22-31. I see Sugo also, he's been grinding a lot of games, very good Protoss player, 22-18. Obviously Taitu 21-96. I think Taitu's a no-brainer for the top 5. Trying to look down to see who else
but again,
we got.
this is people. These are people that we already know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And see, I'm still not sure if this is the goal, because if they're just trying to find the top 5 best, I have a feeling it's going to be the same people again, right?
Probably, yeah. Well, who's this? Yeah. Who's this Terran here? Savitar? Do you know who that is?
But I do think you do have if you're an up and comer, I think if you can hit 2200,
yeah,
I think you have a very good chance of getting in, because like Jaeyun said, they could get decayed.
Right.
Or they, like for example me, when I played BSL, the reason I got into Chobo League was because I didn't play on that account until like the last 3 days, and then I thought it was a week longer.
Yeah.
And it wasn't.
Right.
So I missed it by like 10 points or something.
Yeah.
So it could be one of those where people aren't going to ladder.
Yeah.
So there is a very good chance, if you really want to play with it, I would say if you can hit S rank, go for it. You could definitely get in it. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Just looking down the list again. Oh, there's also Kingdom, right? Kingdom is also in Pro League. I see him at 2061. Notorious. I think this guy's what's it called? Zisagi. He's also a pretty good Zerg. I see Jiraiya, Unko, Urban, and I guess a few others. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of excited to see. I mean, I hope to see some more American players, at least like in the BSL. But I think it'll be interesting to see who gets qualified, and I plan to ladder on the last week because I don't want to get DK'd. But yeah, the Nation Wars definitely seem pretty cool. So for all of you guys, make sure you guys participate in BSL. It's definitely fun. It's entertaining. And if you guys want to be in this Nation Wars thing, ladder it up.
I do remember now that little Chaba pointed out that it's. I think I remember in the thread that it's specifically nations, where if there's not enough people from your country, then they start combining. For example, he was talking about how Canada and USA might get combined. Well, if it's actually just pure countries, then I can understand this more, because if it's, for example, Poland, right, it's gonna be Bonnet and Koget 100%, but then there's 3 more viable spots.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just gonna be EU versus NA.
Yeah.
Right. There's 3 open spots for you. It would be more like Poland versus US.
Right.
Or Poland versus Canada.
Yeah.
So I think this is more country based.
Right. I feel like Canada can make their own team, right? Like they've got TT1, Dragon, they got Egyo. Let's see, I'm missing anyone else here. I guess Castle's pretty high ranked. Gypsy if he decides to come alive, but I know he won't because he hates all of us. I think Canada probably can be their own team, to be honest with you. I don't think
Canada can make their own team, right? They got Dragon, they got Egyo, they got
TT1, yeah. And then,
who else is from Canada?
I think I see Castle. He's a pretty good Protoss. And I don't see another Canadian, but I don't know. The Zion guy, I don't know who he is, but okay. Well, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Yeah.
Well, Castle's a 2v2 player, so.
Oh, that's true.
Also, how do you take that in consideration since there's no 2v2 ladder?
Yeah.
Is it like you can have a 1v1, a high 1v1 rank, but 2v2 is completely different than 1-on-1.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just even strategically choosing like some 2v2 players would be probably pretty wise, because you might get top 5 players, but like you have to 2 of those guys have to play 2-on-2, right? So I think I don't know if it has to be like the top, or if the team captains can probably just choose like, hey, I want this 2-on-2 guy because he's really good at 2-on-2, and like like I know Jiraiya in US is also what's it called? Very good at 2-on-2, but he might not make top 5 for the 1-on-1, but he might be a good pick for the team. So I don't know. I feel like you know, maybe you'll be the team of the USA, so you can like you know, decide all that stuff. But yeah, yeah. So everyone, again, it doesn't look like we have any like Q&A questions. We are right at the 6 o'clock at least PDT time, and that is going to conclude our show. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in. It was definitely a blast just being here, just being able to talk StarCraft. Hopefully you guys learned some good PvZ. Hopefully you guys learned a lot. If you guys also go to my Matcherino link, you can also donate free of charge using those 3 codes, ZVT, TVZ, ZVP. I did not get a 4th PvZ code this time, but maybe next time I'll have another one. So make sure you guys tune in again. Next time it's going to be on Wednesday, not on Friday, because I'm going to be out traveling. But it's going to be Wednesday. We're going to go over, I believe, Terran versus Protoss, or Protoss versus Terran. I am not sure. But we'll be doing another episode. Maybe Nyoken will join if he's free. But yeah, make sure you guys tune in. And also submit some replays if you guys want to have some good viewer replays. You know, a mind like Nyoken is, you know, it's hard to get some good coaching from this guy. So yeah, and also make sure you guys check out his stream and whatnot. So we will be cutting. Everybody, really appreciate it. I'm probably going to host my buddy Future. And yeah, peace out, guys.